My name is Rachel Miller. I'm 29 years old, and for most of my life, I've been branded as the stain of the Miller family. At 17, my father threw me out with nothing but a backpack. My mother crossed her arms and told me not to crawl back when I failed. To them, I was gone, erased, a mistake they would never claim again. 12 years later, the echo of my heels filled the courthouse in Dallas. Every step was deliberate, sharp, slicing through the hushed whispers of lawyers and tenants waiting for their cases to be called. I spotted them instantly. Linda in a pearl necklace, posture stiff and proud. Charles in a pressed navy suit, scanning papers like a man rehearsing for victory. And Emily, my younger sister, seated loyally at their side. Perfect hair, perfect smile. The daughter they always wanted. They weren't here for justice. They were here to crush a tenant, Claire Mitchell, a single mother who had begged for repairs after black mold spread through her daughter's bedroom. Instead of fixing it, my parents filed for eviction. That's who they were. Landlords who ruled like feudal lords, more concerned with rent checks than human lives. The moment I entered, Linda's hand froze mid-gesture. Charles's face drained of color. Emily blinked, confused, then tried to hide her reaction. To them, I was supposed to be invisible, maybe dead for all they cared. And now here I was, walking straight toward the defense table, a briefcase in my hand instead of a duffel bag. Claire looked up at me, wide-eyed. Her hands shook. She whispered, "Are you lost? This is the defendant's table." I set my case down, leaned in, and placed my bar card on the wood. "I'm not lost. I'm your attorney." Her jaw dropped. "But I can't afford pro bono," I said, my voice steady. "You don't owe me a cent. What you owe me is the truth when you're asked questions. That's all." Behind me, I heard a sharp hiss. Linda's voice, slicing through clenched teeth. "What do you think you're doing?" Charles muttered something darker, a growl that rumbled like a storm brewing. Emily's eyes darted between us, caught in the wreckage of a family tearing itself open in public. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. For the first time in 12 years, I wasn't begging for their approval. I was standing across from them, ready to dismantle the empire they built on appearances and lies. The heavy oak doors swung open. Judge Patricia Holbrook strode in, her black robe trailing behind her. The room rose to its feet, but my parents stayed frozen, still trying to process the daughter they had thrown away. The gavel cracked against the bench. The sound was final, commanding. Judge Holbrook's eyes swept across the room, then lingered on me, her brow furrowed, recognition flickering. "Counsel, please approach." I stood, adjusted my jacket, and walked forward. The heat of my parents' stares burned holes in my back. They wanted me gone, silent, erased. But I wasn't the girl they discarded at 17. I was their reckoning, and this courtroom was about to see it. "This isn't moisture," I said as I rose from my chair, sliding a stack of photographs onto the evidence table. "This is a health hazard." I clicked a remote, and the courtroom projector lit up. The first photo filled the screen, a ceiling sagging under the weight of months of leaks, yellow stains spiderwebbing outward. Gasps rippled through the gallery. The next photo showed black mold crawling like ink across Claire's daughter's bedroom wall. I heard someone in the back mutter, "That's toxic." I turned to the judge. "Your Honor, this is not cosmetic damage. This is mold proven to trigger respiratory illness. The defendant's daughter has been treated for asthma and bronchitis repeatedly since the ceiling began leaking. These," I held up medical records, "are from Baylor Scott and White Medical Center. The doctors directly link her symptoms to prolonged exposure. Claire sat beside me, gripping the edge of the table so tightly her knuckles were white. Her eyes watered, not from fear this time, but from the relief of hearing her story spoken aloud. Your Honor, I continued, the city of Dallas issued a formal notice requiring repairs within 30 days. That notice was ignored. The landlords, Linda and Charles Miller, chose to collect rent instead of making their property safe. Before Judge Holbrook could respond, my mother shot to her feet. The pearls around her neck rattled as her voice cut through the air. This is nonsense. Just a little moisture. Every old building has it. My daughter, she jabbed a finger at me, fury bright in her eyes. She's twisting this to humiliate her own family. The courtroom buzzed. Some leaned forward, others whispered. Mrs. Miller, the judge warned, her tone sharp. You will sit down unless you wish to be removed. But Linda wasn't finished. She's not even a real lawyer. She's always been jealous, always wanted to destroy us. She'll say anything. Enough, I said, my voice steady, but loud enough to cut across hers. You can call me a failure. You can deny me as your daughter, but you cannot deny the law. Texas statute is clear. Landlords are obligated to maintain premises fit for human habitation. Ignoring toxic mold and structural collapse is not just neglect. It's dangerous. It's illegal. And it nearly cost a child her health. I laid the inspector's report on the judge's bench. Official letterhead, stamped, dated, undeniable. This document states the unit should have been vacated months ago. Yet, my clients kept paying until they physically couldn't live there anymore. They didn't break the contract. You did. For the first time, my father shifted in his seat, his hand tightening into a fist. He leaned toward Linda, whispering something I couldn't hear. His jaw twitched, his face blotched with red. Judge Holbrook's pen tapped against her notebook. Her eyes moved from me to the photos, then to my parents. Finally, her voice came low, firm, carrying across the silent room. The plaintiffs will answer for this. The words hung like a guillotine blade in the air. I sat down beside Claire. She whispered, "Thank you." But the battle wasn't won yet. This was only the beginning. The gavel came down with a sharp crack. Judge Holbrook's voice rang across the courtroom, steady and absolute. This court rules in favor of the defendant. The eviction is dismissed. The plaintiffs will reimburse 3 months of rent, cover all medical expenses for the tenant's child, and complete repairs within 30 days to bring the property up to code. The words detonated like thunder. Gasps rolled through the gallery. A man in the back let out a low whistle. Claire pressed a trembling hand to her mouth, tears spilling over as she realized she wouldn't lose her home. My parents sat frozen, as if their world had just cracked open. Linda's painted smile faltered into a grimace. Charles's face turned crimson, the veins at his temple pulsing. Emily sat rigid, her eyes darting from them to me, as if unsure which side of history she'd just been pushed onto. I rose to my feet, meeting their eyes for the first time in years, my voice carried in the sudden hush. The law doesn't belong to the greedy. It belongs to those who need protection. And today, it wasn't on your side. For a moment, silence. Then Charles erupted. He slammed his palm on the plaintiff's table so hard the wood rattled. Papers flew into the air like startled birds. "You betrayed us," he roared, his voice echoing off marble walls. "You're no daughter of mine." Before anyone could react, he lunged across the aisle, eyes wild, fists clenched. The bailiff surged forward, pinning him back just feet from me. His spittle hit the floor as he shouted, You'll regret this, Rachel. You'll regret the day you turned against your own blood. Linda screamed his name, tugging at his arm, but her pearls snapped loose and scattered across the floor, rolling under benches like tiny white lies, finally breaking free. The gallery gasped, whispers rising into a storm. Judge Holbrook's gavel slammed again. "Order! Order!" she barked. "Mr. Miller, another outburst and I'll hold you in contempt." The bailiffs dragged him back, forcing him into his chair. His breathing came in ragged bursts. His eyes locked on me with hatred so raw it made the air heavy. But I didn't flinch. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the powerless one. The session ended in chaos. Reporters scribbling notes, tenants whispering, my mother shooting me a look that could have burned through stone. Claire clutched my hand, whispering over and over, "You saved us. You saved us." By the time I left the courthouse, the Texas sun was setting, painting the sky in streaks of red and gold. My phone buzzed in my pocket. An unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Rachel Miller. A man's voice, old but steady. "Yes, who is this?" "My name is Henry Bradford. I was your grandfather's attorney. We need to meet tomorrow morning. It's urgent. About your grandfather." The line clicked dead. I stood on the courthouse steps, phone in my hand, heart hammering. My parents' rage wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning. "A file sealed for 12 years, Henry said, sliding a thick folder across his oak desk. His office smelled of leather and dust, the kind of place where secrets had waited too long. I hesitated before touching it. "What is this?" "Your grandfather's instructions," Henry replied. "James Thompson was my client for over 40 years. He trusted me with something that wasn't meant to surface until either you turned 30 or you achieved a professional degree. You've done both." My throat tightened as I opened the folder. Inside was a trust document stamped and signed. My eyes widened at the number. $80,000 set aside in my name. Henry leaned back in his chair. "It's grown with interest. Nearly $95,000 now. But money isn't the most important thing." He pushed an envelope forward. "This is." My hands shook as I tore it open. My grandfather's handwriting sprawled across the page, careful and deliberate. "Dear Rachel, if you're reading this, then you've proven me right. I knew you had strength they never recognized. I knew you would rise. But I also knew your parents would never choose you. They will always choose money. Please protect yourself. This trust is only a start, not a solution. Remember, you are worth more than they can ever understand." Tears blurred the ink. My grandfather had seen it all. The cruelty, the favoritism, the exile. And he'd tried to leave me something solid in a world that wanted me to break. Henry's voice cut in. "There's more. The week before James died, your mother came to see me. She pressed me about changes to the will. She asked whether your grandfather had made adjustments that favored you. I told her nothing. Client privilege. But her persistence unsettled me. A chill spread through me. When exactly did he die? 2 days later, heart failure, they said. But I never believed it. Before I could speak, a voice broke the silence. Emily, sitting stiffly in the corner, her face pale. She'd come because she wanted to hear the truth, but she'd stayed quiet until now. I remember," she whispered. "Mom once told me to sign a paper. Something about Grandpa's land. She said it was routine, just family paperwork. I didn't understand. I didn't ask questions. The words hung heavy. Henry's eyes sharpened. "What kind of paperwork?" Emily shook her head, eyes glistening. "I don't know. I was 20. I just signed where she told me." I gripped the edge of the desk. The memory of my grandfather's sudden death, the rushed funeral, The way my parents had controlled every detail. It all tilted into focus. He wasn't sick, I murmured. He was planning to change the will. And 2 days after Mom pushed for answers, he was gone. The room felt colder. My heartbeat drummed in my ears. I folded the letter carefully and slipped it into my purse. My grandfather had left me money, yes, but more than that, he'd left me a warning. And suddenly, I knew his death 12 years ago had not been natural. The tests didn't lie, Dr. Russell Hayes whispered, his eyes fixed on the pond where ducks glided in lazy circles. His hands, liver-spotted and trembling, scattered breadcrumbs into the water. Your grandfather had dangerously high levels of digoxin in his blood, enough to trigger arrhythmia, enough to kill. I felt the ground tilt under me. But he wasn't on any heart medication. That's the point, Hayes said, finally looking at me. His gaze was sharp, guilt burning behind it. He wasn't prescribed digoxin by me or anyone else, which means someone slipped it to him, probably in his food or tea. I tried to raise the alarm after his death. The medical examiner dismissed it as a false positive, said it was natural heart failure. My chest tightened. Why didn't you push harder? Hayes dropped his head. Because your father came to me. He said the family wanted peace, that your grandmother couldn't handle an investigation. And then, he offered me money. A lot of money. I was 3 years from retirement. My wife needed cancer treatment. I told myself I was seeing ghosts where there were none. So I took it. His voice cracked. To my shame, I took it. The confession landed like a hammer. My father hadn't just ignored my grandfather's health. He'd paid to bury the truth. Later that week, I confronted my family. We sat around the long mahogany dining table, where we'd once pretended to be a picture-perfect clan. Linda's face was stone. Emily fidgeted nervously, and Charles leaned back in his chair, lips pressed thin. Dr. Hayes admitted everything, I said flatly. The toxicology results, the payoff. He knows you bribed him to stay quiet. The room fell silent. Emily gasped softly, her eyes flicking to our father. Charles slammed his fist on the table, rattling the silverware. Lies. That old man is trying to save his reputation. You paid him in cash, I shot back, and he took it. But now he's ready to testify. It's over. The next moment exploded like glass shattering. Charles surged to his feet, grabbed the chair beside him, and hurled it across the room. It crashed against the wall, splintering. Emily screamed. Linda leapt up, shrieking his name. You think you can destroy us? Charles roared, his face purple with rage. You're not my daughter. You're nothing but a parasite who feeds on this family's name. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. For the first time, his fury didn't scare me. It revealed him. The commotion brought 2 Dallas police officers running in. Neighbors must have called when the shouting started. They restrained Charles, forcing him back into his chair. He spat curses, veins bulging, still trying to lunge at me, as if violence could erase the truth. I gathered my papers calmly, sliding them back into my briefcase. You can throw furniture, Dad. You can scream until your voice breaks. But you can't change science. You can't erase records, and you can't silence me anymore. That evening, I met Hayes again. He looked frail, but resolute, the guilt etched deeper in his face. I'll sign it, he said quietly. A sworn affidavit. I let myself be bought once. I won't make that mistake again. It's time the truth came out. My pulse hammered as I nodded. The first brick of their empire had just been pulled out, and the walls were about to collapse. Emily, I said softly, you have to decide. Are you still their pawn, or are you ready to be my ally? She flinched, her eyes darting toward the kitchen where Linda's voice echoed faintly from upstairs. We were sitting in her car, parked half a block away from our parents' house. Her hands clutched the steering wheel, knuckles white. "I can't," she whispered. "If they find out, if they even suspect—" "They already suspect me," I cut in. "And sooner or later, they'll drag you down with them. You think loyalty keeps you safe. But Emily, you saw Dad in court. He would rather burn everything than face the truth." Her lips trembled. "What do you want from me?" "Go to the basement. Look through Mom's files. She saves everything, receipts, statements, journals. If there's proof they poisoned Grandpa, it'll be there." Emily's eyes glossed with tears. For a long moment, I thought she'd refuse. Then, with a shaky nod, she whispered, "Fine, but if we do this, we do it tonight." We waited until the house went quiet, until lights flickered off one by one. Then we slipped through the side door and descended the narrow staircase. The basement smelled of mildew and dust, boxes stacked neatly in labeled rows. Linda's obsession with order had always been suffocating, but tonight it was a gift. Emily tugged open a drawer marked 2009-2011. Folders slid out, crisp and heavy. We crouched on the cold concrete, flipping pages under the beam of a flashlight. "Here," she breathed, pulling out a credit card statement. Her finger traced highlighted charges. 3 maxed-out cards, overdraft fees, balances $30,000 in the red. They were drowning in debt before Grandpa died. I scanned the numbers, my heart racing. Motive, spelled out in black and white. Minutes later, Emily froze. She pulled another folder, smaller, thinner. Receipts fluttered out, purchases from obscure online suppliers. One item glared up at us. Digitalis purpurea seeds. My stomach clenched. Foxglove, natural source of digoxin. Emily's hands shook as she set it aside. "Rachel, oh my God." Then she found the notebook, a slim, leather-bound journal with Linda's unmistakable handwriting. She opened it, and both of us leaned in. The early pages looked ordinary. Grocery lists, errands. But then the entries shifted. Notes about dosage, calculations scribbled in margins, phrases like "add to tea" and "hard to detect." Emily's voice cracked. She planned it. She wrote down everything. We turned to the final page. The words were seared into the paper, written in Linda's neat, sharp hand. "It's done. No one suspects. The estate is ours." For a moment, the only sound was our breathing, jagged and uneven. Emily dropped the book as if it burned. "She killed him," Emily whispered, her whole body trembling. "She murdered Grandpa, and Dad helped cover it up. All this time, I thought maybe you exaggerated, maybe you hated them too much. But this is real." Tears streamed down her face. She grabbed her phone with trembling hands and started snapping pictures of every page, every receipt, every statement. Her sobs filled the basement, raw and broken, but her movements were steady. For the first time, she wasn't shielding them. She was exposing them. I placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're doing the right thing." Emily turned to me, eyes red but fierce. "I'm done being their puppet. I'm with you now." It was the first time I'd ever heard her sound free. We packed the copies into my briefcase, careful not to disturb the boxes too much. When we climbed the stairs, the house above us was still dark, silent. But everything had changed. At midnight, the streets of Dallas were nearly empty as we drove to the district attorney's office. Emily sat beside me, clutching the notebook like it was both a weapon and a curse. Neither of us spoke. The hum of the tires on asphalt was the only sound, carrying us closer to a line we could never uncross. When we pulled up outside the DA's building, Emily finally whispered, "Once we hand this over, there's no going back." I looked at her, steady. There shouldn't be. Grandpa deserves justice, and so do we. She took a deep breath, wiped her face, and nodded. Together, we stepped out of the car, briefcase in hand. The night air was heavy, charged with the weight of truth. For the first time in 12 years, we weren't just sisters. We were allies, walking into war. From landlords to murderers. That was the headline, plastered across every Dallas paper the morning the trial began. By the time I stepped into the courthouse, the place was swarming. Reporters with cameras, tenants clutching old documents, strangers craning their necks for a glimpse of the disgraced Millers. Inside, the air was heavier. The gallery overflowed, every seat filled. Former tenants whispered in clusters, some glaring at my parents as they were led in wearing orange jumpsuits. Linda still tried to hold her chin high, pearls long gone, hair grayer, eyes colder. Charles shuffled beside her, his swagger gone, his face hardened like stone. Emily sat next to me, her back straight, her fingers clenched around mine for courage. The prosecution started with the foundation, the financial collapse. Stacks of bank records laid out their desperation. 3 credit cards maxed, overdraft notices piling, tens of thousands owed just months before my grandfather's death. Motive, Catherine Morris, the district attorney, said firmly. They were drowning, and James Thompson planned to cut them off. Next came Henry Bradford. His voice was steady as he recounted Linda's visit to his office days before my grandfather died. She asked directly whether her father intended to alter his will. She seemed desperate. His testimony painted a timeline that made the jury lean forward in unison. Then Dr. Hayes took the stand. The old man's hands trembled, but his voice carried with the weight of years of guilt. The blood work showed elevated digoxin, levels consistent with poisoning. I was bribed by Charles Miller to remain silent. Murmurs rippled through the gallery as he admitted taking the money, as he confessed his shame. The jury's faces were grave, their eyes never leaving him. But the centerpiece, the blade through any defense, was Linda's own notebook. Catherine held it aloft, then placed it on the evidence projector. The words lit the screen for everyone to see. Add to tea, hard to detect. Dosage increases gradually. And finally, the last entry. It's done. No one suspects. The estate is ours. The defense scrambled. Their attorney, sweating through his collar, argued that the notebook was a crime novel draft, nothing more. The jury raised eyebrows. Catherine simply called in the handwriting expert. Under oath, the specialist confirmed every line was Linda's. Not a novel, a confession. Then came the witnesses. A former tenant named Thomas took the stand. His voice steady, his eyes locked on Charles. He told me last year, when I complained about the furnace, he said, "Shut up or you'll end up like my old man." I thought he meant grumpy, but now I know he meant dead. The room broke into gasps. When it was Emily's turn, she walked to the stand like she was walking into fire. Her voice was soft, but unwavering, as she described finding the receipts, the seeds, the notebook. When Catherine asked why she'd turned against her own parents, Emily's voice cracked. Because Grandpa loved us. He didn't deserve this. And my sister, she didn't deserve to be thrown out like garbage. The truth matters more than protecting people who don't deserve protection. That was when Linda snapped. She leapt to her feet, eyes blazing, tears streaking her face. "You ungrateful snake," she screamed at me, her voice echoing. "You betrayed your own blood. You'll rot for this." The judge's gavel slammed down. "Mrs. Miller, sit down, or I'll have you removed." But Linda's fury had already poisoned the air. The jury's faces hardened further. their pity evaporating. Finally, it was my turn. I recounted my life, the exile, the years of silence, the truth I uncovered. I didn't want revenge, I said firmly, my voice carrying across the silent room. I wanted justice for my grandfather, for Claire, for every tenant they treated like expendable trash. They called me worthless, but it was never about me. It was about them, about their greed. And greed killed James Thompson. The defense tried one last desperate cross, painting me as vindictive, claiming I wanted the inheritance. I looked the jury in the eye and said, I built my life without their money. Let it all go to their victims. That's justice. When closing arguments ended, the room went still as the jury filed out. Hours crawled by, tension coiled like a spring. Emily's hand shook in mine. Linda sat rigid, eyes darting. Charles stared into nothing, lips moving silently. Maybe a prayer, maybe a curse. At last, the jurors returned. The forewoman stood, holding the verdict slip, my breath held tight in my chest. On the charge of first-degree murder, she read, her voice clear, we find the defendants guilty. Linda wailed. Charles sagged in his chair. On the charges of fraud and evidence tampering, guilty. The judge's gavel struck, sealing it. Helen and Charles Miller, you are hereby sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The courtroom erupted. Reporters shouting questions, former tenants cheering, the weight of 12 years of lies crashing down in one single word, guilty. I sat there, frozen, as Emily buried her face in my shoulder. My parents were led away in shackles, Linda still cursing, Charles silent at last. And for the first time in my life, the truth wasn't mine alone to carry. The verdict shattered everything my parents had built. Within weeks, court orders stripped them of what remained of their so-called empire. The 3 rental properties were auctioned off, along with their cars, investments, even the house where I'd once been thrown out like trash. After legal fees, nearly $2 million remained. That money was divided among more than 20 victims, families who had lived under leaking roofs, children who had grown up sick from mold, tenants who had been threatened into silence. For once, the people they crushed walked away with something more than scars. Claire was one of the first to receive her share. She held the check with shaking hands, tears streaming as she said, "This means my daughter can go to college. She won't be trapped the way I was." Watching her hope bloom again reminded me why I had chosen this path in the first place. Justice wasn't about vengeance. It was about restoring lives. The firm where I worked called me into the conference room one morning. Diane, the senior partner, slid a folder across the table. "Rachel, we want you to become partner." I stared, stunned. 2 years ago, I was just a junior attorney, barely trusted with small cases. Now, I was being asked to lead. Diane smiled. "You've proven that you're not afraid to fight the battles that matter. That's what this firm needs." I thought of my grandfather's letter, the one he'd written years before he died. "You are worth more than they will ever understand." For the first time, I believed it. Emily's journey was just beginning. She enrolled in paralegal studies at the community college downtown, determined to stand beside me in courtrooms not as the obedient daughter of Linda and Charles, but as my equal. She told me, "I spent years protecting lies. Now I want to protect truth." Watching her transform from my parents' puppet into my ally was something I never imagined I'd live to see. Months later, we drove together to the cemetery. The autumn wind rustled through the trees as we stood at my grandfather's grave, carrying violets, his favorite flower. I laid them gently on the headstone, whispering, "We got them, Grandpa. They can't hurt anyone anymore." Emily pulled an envelope from her coat. Henry gave this to me after the trial. Grandpa wanted you to have it once everything was over. My hands trembled as I unfolded the paper. His handwriting was just as I remembered. Firm, deliberate. Dear Rachel, if you are reading this, then justice has been served. I feared what your parents might do, and I feared it would fall to you to uncover the truth. I am proud of you, but remember this: the sweetest revenge is not in punishment, but in living well. Build a life they said you couldn't have. Care for people they would have ignored. That will be your victory. Tears stung my eyes. Emily leaned against me, silent, letting me take in his final words. Standing there, I realized something. Blood is not a shield for evil. Family ties can be broken, corrupted, twisted, until they no longer mean protection. What endures, what truly matters, is justice and truth. That's what binds people together. That's what creates a new kind of family. In the months that followed, Emily and I built exactly that. Together at the firm, we represented tenants bullied by landlords, workers cheated out of wages, families silenced by intimidation. Every win wasn't just a case closed. It was another stone laid in the foundation of a family we were building for ourselves. A family built not from obligation or fear, but from choice, from loyalty freely given. Sometimes at night, I'd sit at my desk with my grandfather's letters, running my fingers over the words, "You've already won." He was right. Winning didn't mean watching my parents rot in prison, though they would spend the rest of their lives there, unrepentant and bitter. Winning meant proving that they had failed to define me, that their cruelty had not destroyed me, that I had chosen to become something greater. Looking back, I understood the real lesson. Being born into a family doesn't mean you owe them silence when they cross the line into evil. Blood may connect us, but truth defines us. And when blood turns toxic, truth is the only cure. Today, when I walk into a courtroom, I don't just carry my law degree. I carry the weight of survival, of betrayal, of resilience. I carry my grandfather's faith in me, Emily's courage to stand with me, and the voices of every tenant who once thought no one would ever fight for them. That's my family now. Not the Millers who chose greed, but the people who choose truth. And maybe that's the sweetest revenge of all: living well, living justly, and building something stronger than what they tried to take from me. Before I close this chapter, I want to ask you something. I'd love to know how far this story travels. Leave me a comment and tell me where you're listening from. And don't forget to subscribe. Your support is what keeps me going, what allows me to keep sharing stories that matter. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for carrying this truth forward.